Hi, Soul Tribe. Welcome to Exploring the Cosmic Universe, Part 2 with Phil Rice. And we were just talking backstage about let's have fun tonight. So, we've got some practical things to share with you, as well as exploring the universe. Last week, we talked about Big Bang and we talked about perhaps how the universe was created, as well as looking into some amazing information that Phil has shared with Hermeticism and talking about Franz Barden and some other things. And I do have some clients that are holding up their Franz Barden books. So you've definitely inspired, which is so lovely to see. They love you, Phil. So it's really, really lovely. And thank you guys for the love in the comments. And thank you, Tim. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. And before we get too far into it, Tim has just reminded me, let me add this to the stage. So we have the gorgeous Sophie has her love reading. So using discount code Valentine, you'll save 10% on the love readings. And that does end on Valentine's Day. So not too much longer. And happy full moon in Leo. I'm seeing a few full moon comments too. And we're so excited because we see the channel is just under, or it's getting close to the 16,000 subscriber mark. So thank you for the love, everyone. And yeah, we look forward to bringing you new, exciting shows and content for this year. So definitely keep tuned. And we have Phil's Substack too, which let me just highlight and bring this up. So I know a few people have been joining your little crew, and your crew is growing, which is lovely.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and how are you doing today, Phil?
Well, I'm so wonderfully pleased beside myself to be here. I'm bouncing off the walls. I'm hardly containing my excitement. And it's wonderful to be back with the lovely Solreta. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you to the lovely team at My Saint Jupiter. Hopefully my French is getting a little bit there. I probably bollocks all that up, but I'm really good, mate. Yeah, it's as like yourself. It's getting real busy. Got on my own channel. We've got a bunch of shows lined up. I've got another live panel this weekend for those who are barred and curious. And for if you want to join us, guys, go check out the channel. It'll be in the description, no doubt. But the Substack's going great. Guys, thank you everyone that's come over to Substack. I appreciate it. I know you sometimes have to go out of your way for these different platforms, these unfamiliar ones, but I'm pretty happy with Substack. There's heaps of stuff on there. Thank you for all the support. Let me know. We've got a group chat opened in there, so you can chat real time with me throughout the day, and ask questions, and there's more stuff coming on there. So thank you. But I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Been out in the garden and letting the chickens out and playing with Lyra this morning and making abundance potion. And that's also, what I want to talk about. The download I was getting with this second part of the show was I really think, looking at the little container of the Soul Alchemy Potions group that I work with, and we're working with monthly manifestations on the new moons, which have been beautiful. And I would say the higher percentage of things people are wanting to manifest is around abundance. Secondary category would be love, which I think, both very important aspects to life. But I was thinking, how can we look at this conversation tonight from also like a point of view of rules or principles or things that we can apply from the universe? So I just want to bring up, I found this really interesting YouTube through the week, which I'm still to finish getting through. And it was quantum information. And I just want to, it's called Panicism. And this is a doctrine or belief that everything material, however small, has an element or individual consciousness. So it almost sort of ties in a little bit with like the plasma theory or plasma consciousness. But yeah, this was just a really interesting, I've got sticky notes like left around everywhere from listening to it, and even parts I had to like slow it down and extract little bits out of it. But it was a really interesting show that I felt that people that were interested in our show would also be wanting to know a little bit more about looking at the quantum side of things from a different perspective. So he talks about like consciousness creates mathematics, not sort of like the other way around. And one of my favorite takeaway quotes was, quantum information is the representation of the inner experience. The collapse of the wave function is the representation of my free will. So I'm just going to repeat that one again. Quantum information is the representation of the inner experience. The collapse of the wave function is the representation of our free will. So in other words, we're living this kind of consciousness as our inner experience, but when we sort of become aware of that, and depending on what we're putting our energy or our thoughts to, we can actually create or collapse that wave using our free will. And that's talked a lot about quantum manifestation, where we need to become like less particle and more wave, or if we look at it in brainwave terms, less theta and more kind of gamma or theta. So we need to step into these higher states of awareness and consciousness. And I do have some extra quotes and things to share with you guys tonight, but I just want to get your take on that, Phil, and around this little picture. Let me hold this up. This is just one that I have in my bathroom that a friend gave me when I had my second daughter. And we see sort of this universal womb space. And, the feminine element gently cradles the power to birth the spirit of love into an unfolding nature of humanity, as the little post on the back. But yeah, I just wanted to get your take on how we can sort of tap into this universe, harness this creative energy or force, and look at applying it to our daily life. And if there's any practices or things that you feel really work with that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So something to keep in mind, everyone, is that there is, there's these what we might call the cosmic wheelworks, or the wheelworks of nature. There's processes that are happening. We see the sun every day. There's cycles and rhythms and patterns that are observable, and these are how we can make sense of what's going on. And once we've got our sort of head wrapped around pattern recognition, we can come to understand the nature of cause and effect. And cause and effect can help us understand how we bring things into form from more of the causal or the mental plane, where we have an idea and we go, okay, I want to make this idea fact in the world. And so, that's so on the topic of manifestation, for example. But, just in general, when we sort of just stop and just pay attention to, there's just activity going on all around us. There's growth going on all around us. There are trees that are just growing. That's what they do. They don't move around much. Okay. They generally stay where they are, and they're going that way, and they're just growing. They're just like, okay, this is my one job. Right. We have, you might say that there's gradations of complexity when it comes to sentience. Some animals are highly advanced. They can do lots of complicated, and what is it? A potato has more DNA or something than the human does, or something. So
oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, something like that. And there's a couple of animals that have got these, there's aspects of them that are more complex. But here's the thing, that doesn't necessarily translate to some kind of level of higher consciousness. Maybe it represents more potential. For all we know, potatoes, if they have got the same or more, they might end up taking over the world at some point, because the old cat. But what I'm saying here is that when we pay attention to natural cycles, those are things we can hook into and ride, essentially. Because if we're working against natural cycles, we're swimming against the grain, we're swimming upstream. And so we're going to get some good muscles from that, but we may also get bruised and that as well. And so starting off by becoming familiar with things that are immediately apparent to us is a very good way of doing this. So you pay attention to nature. And what do we have? We have energy, we have consciousness, and we have information. And the energy has a consciousness about it. Everything has an energetic substrate or a layer to it. There's the physical, there's the astral form realm, there's the mental realm, and then there's more of the quantum or the akasha, or this what we call the ether or the still point, which is like where, which is when we get into the realms of the very, very small to the near. Basically, there's nothing there. So you go from they talk about the journey from 0 to 1 is far greater than the journey from one to infinity. So the creative impulse is essentially seeking a grand undertaking. I'm sure that anyone who's had their first child will realize that this is hard work, man. Like, I mean, you could relate to this, I'm sure,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Oxytocin hormones definitely help. They kick in when you have a baby. There's a reason that, a lot of us feel in bliss or can survive on no sleep.
yeah, so there you go, right? And so when we're about to embark on some kind of process or grand quest or grand venture, and like awareness is the thing. Being aware of natural process, like seriously, you don't have to intellectually grasp it as such. It's when you sit out in nature and just start picking up on what's going on there. There's naturalness that you can tune into, because a lot of how we operate is not based on naturalness. It's some sort of contrived societal construct in a lot of cases. And we're operating to artificial sort of intellectual types of processes that have they're not too natural, if you will. So
Yeah. Well, this marries in perfect what you're saying as well. So this little quote that I found, a Buddha quote: if you look at what you have in your life, you'll always have more. If you look at what you don't have in life, you'll never have enough. And I think that is such a good thing that, when we do look into nature and we see there's abundance around us everywhere, it is a reminder that a lot of, I guess, the simulated or the constructed matrix version of reality is perhaps not sort of like the underlying organic nature that humans originally came from. But yeah, continue. I just thought that wove in perfectly with what you were
that's
saying.
right. So a lot of what we have built in the modern world has been emulated from nature. We've seen things happen. And what we've done is we've sought to improve it. So, back in the day, the hunter-gatherers, or let's just say the gatherers, would go from tree to tree and they'd pick up the fruit on the ground or the fresher stuff on the tree, and they'd wander around. And half the day was spent wandering from tree to tree. Now, what happened was that the seeds would blow off and gather and just lie somewhere, and then they would grow. Somebody got the idea of like, hey, if we plant these all together, we won't have to walk as far as much. And so that's that idea of like intelligent organization. Now, there is an organizing principle at play, like I said: energy, consciousness, and information. And so the energy is like the carrier, the consciousness is the intelligence that seeks to result, to do something. There's a thing that knows how to do stuff, an intelligence baked in. And the information is like the intention that you load on. So you've got the energy, which is the carrier, and then you've got the consciousness, which is sort of like, is sort of the base level of that. And then you've got the consciousness, the energy, and then the information is what you put on top. And then you've got a thought form, which you can then push into process. And I sort of wandered off topic there, but yeah.
No,
So
I'm getting the vision of kind of a mitochondrial cell as you're talking about that. There's, sort of a fluidy type part containing all the different aspects as a delivery system. I do have a quote too that came from that show that I watched that I put up just before. And you can see my messy writing: entanglement is what connects everything. So there's also, a fundamental underlying quantum entanglement that's connecting us, even as a beautiful soul tribe right now. Even if we close our eyes for a moment, you can feel into everyone's energy, everyone's consciousness dancing and swirling together. And I think that's why we keep coming back to meet in this space, because it does feel energetically quite harmonious and quite beautiful. Was there anything that you wanted to speak of around, let me bring up this little quote. So this is a Bob Proctor one, and I'm re-listening to one of his books at the moment, as is one of my good friends. We're going to have a little book club that we're doing. So at the moment, we're focused on his work, and it says, "You are God's highest form of creation. You are the living, breathing, creative magnet. You have an ability to control what you attract into your life." So what he talks about in one of his books is holding us as humans, I guess, being made in the likeness of God, that we have this ability to hold in our consciousness an image or a photo, and it's almost like a lens. So he's saying, in you holding this, you're sort of showing that to God what you want to put forward. And that's why, where we talked before about focusing on the positive things or being out in nature and counting things that you're grateful for, rather than about putting your mind towards the negative, that it's really, really super important in terms of actually physically changing your reality. What do you think around this quote?
Yeah, so this is really where, like, I'll say this a bit, where the rubber meets the road, guys. So whatever you put your mind on, especially if you're doing any kind of empowerment practice, personal empowerment, spiritual empowerment, whatever it is, if you're cranking up your personal juice, you're going to amplify your attractiveness, and what you attract is going to be based on your current kind of makeup and energetic composition or signature. So if you're having a lot of crappy thoughts, there's that old quote, man has has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain, across the genders, whatever. But essentially, if you're flavoring your magnet with sort of crappy condiments, then you're going to attract, like attracts like.
Yeah.
And so, I would say that whatever you do, just make the most beautiful tuning fork attracting magnet, because you're building a magnet for what you want. And that magnet starts everything from your thoughts, the state of your feeling and emotional body, and the state of your physical body. Look after these three bodies. This is your gift. And so, when it comes to, like what Bob was saying there, you're like, it took a lot of work and effort to put these, we are apparently the highest sentient life forms on the planet. Yeah, there's dolphins, I know, and there's also, we've got friends walking amongst us as well. But ostensibly, to the person on the street, humans appear to be the top of the food chain, and because
He
we've
has
got guns.
another, yeah, he has another quote sort of similar, that being made in the mind of God or something.
Yes.
I forget the quote exactly. But what you were just saying, I want to break that down a little bit further as well. So you were talking about, I love your quote, Phil, about, what different condiments and things do you want to put on your magnet? That was cute. So when we're looking at it, though, our hearts are this magnet. So when we think about, say, for example, like relationships, and we might think about, I'm a nice person. Why am I attracting crappy relationships? Or, why am I attracting different experiences? We need to look to the back of the filing cabinet and perhaps, like, what were your fundamental core beliefs growing up? What's your value and worth? And all of these little, conversations or thoughts, emotions and feelings or programs that are going on in the back of the head, even though you might not be, or you could even be opposite as well to the type of person you're attracting. Usually what's behind that magnet is a set of belief systems. So I just wanted to sort of look at it from that point of view, as well as the law of opposites being one of, the fundamental laws of the universe. So sometimes if we're trying to break free from that pattern or the programs behind our magnet, and we're looking at the law of opposites, so we'll just use relationship example because it's the easiest one to understand. So say, for example, a codependent and a narcissist. And, quite often they have this dance together. There's plenty of books written about it. But even though they might be opposite in one sort of taking and one giving, what you find is that eventually, they will travel into the opposite direction for a certain amount of time. So it's not that the person will always stay in that relationship. Usually they get to a point of where they can't take it anymore, and they hit what is like a triangle point. So a law of opposites will always come back to a singularity sort of point in creation. So we're in this constant learning cycle, I guess, in life and in relationships. Just want to sort of apply it to a way that people can look at from a physical side of things. So if you want to, shorten the distance of that law of opposites, just come back to yourself much faster. And the same with, the magnet. If you're generating or you're attracting things to you that you don't want in your experience, pick it apart, look at the mindset, look at the beliefs and the emotions and things that were formed. Reach out, book a session. Both of us do sessions helping people through these kinds of situations and scenarios and identifying whether it's emotions or beliefs and things behind it. And Tim saying magnets are a great analogy. Yeah, thanks, Phil. That's such a great way to talk about it. And our heart's literally magnetic. And I can see a lot of people agreeing with you, which is good.
So when we're talking about like they have that old saying, positive attracts negative. So positive people end up attracting negative people, if we just put it real basic like that, right? Why is that? I think what it is generally is it's the same thing why the popular kids in school seem to be the ones that set the trends. They've got some kind of magnetic, it's in a lot of cases it's unconscious. They don't know why. Maybe it's because they're good looking, or they got the nice clothes, or they're smart, or they're the class clown, whatever it is. There's something magnetic about their personality, and they'll probably end up being really great salespeople, to be honest. But when it comes to this kind of like, why am I attracting all these negative people? It's because, well, why do we surround ourselves with the people that we do? Well, I mean, I'm in my sort of mid to late 40s now, and I've got to say, I'm pretty picky about my inner circle. And, it's made up of people who have attributes, characteristics, and traits that I aspire to. There's something I really like about these people. And that's what I exalt when I talk to them and talk about them. It's like, wow, and yeah, they've got some funky habits too, but they're also, seeking to take themselves further. And so, you kind of weigh up, what are the non-negotiables when it comes to relationships? Maybe it's, there's certain types of behaviors or, funky habits that, you're like, yeah, no, that's a big no from me. Thanks. But when it comes to building this magnet that we want, part of the process of cleaning yourself up from a hermetic sense, we use the Franz Barden material, is to do something called, introspection, which is essentially the black and white soul mirror, which is it's a bit of a detailed process, but not too bad. You basically write a list of your good qualities and of your virtues and your flaws and your weaknesses. So virtues and strengths, flaws and weaknesses. And that gives you a map of your personality. So you can start taking out the things you don't want. Now, concurrently at the same time, that's a detailed practice. But what you can do is this one called basically highlighting the pearls on the crowns of others. So let's say everyone all the close people in your life are all wearing a crown, and they are their outstanding characteristics, character traits, attributes, personality quirks, anything that makes you want to go, man, this is the reason why I love hanging out with this person. And and you start seeing those, and you have your own crown with a matching one, and that when they're both resonating with each other. And so by pointing it out, you're directing your conscious mind and your unconscious mind to sort of go, I like that. And you're being specific. And you'll hear me mention the value of specificity. There's that thing that I like about that person, and I want that thing. And so that's why I'm hanging out with them, because you'll naturally start absorbing that and becoming that through osmosis anyway. There's a natural resonance that's developing. But by writing out a list of the 5 closest people in your life and going, you know what? This is each one of you could write 10 things, but just start with 1 or 2 and just go, this person's in my life because they're strong, they're assertive, they're empowered, they go to the gym, they're loving, they're kind, they're compassionate, they've always got time for people. And by focusing on those things, you'll start, those balloons will outweigh the anchors, if you will. And you'll start getting much more vertical positive lift in the sense of ascension, if you will. You will have to go and trim those anchors off at some point, because some of them will be like, oh, I need to deal with this. But you can do this, and that will create more of that magnet. You're still going to attract interesting people, but interesting people in the sense that they're curious, and so you give them a chance to talk. That's what I've found. So.
And I think sometimes we'll also attract different lessons and the astrology at different periods of time will also influence that. So sometimes it might feel like it makes no sense as to why things are coming up. And I heard an interesting expression the other day. It was talking about astrology from the point of view of us kind of holding all of those planets or all of those kind of qualities that the planets have within each of us. And it's like the planet being the external. And just before we came on, and I'm highlighting comments that are in all caps. So Tim, I've seen your comment. We're going to ask that shortly as well. So yeah, if you've got questions, please put it in all caps so we can have a look into it. But yeah, you were talking before we came on about planets, and we were talking about planets having consciousness. Do you want to maybe step into that a little?
Yeah, sure. So if we look at the 7 heavenly bodies, or the 7 celestial bodies, the classical ones, so we start, on the magical path. Generally, we'll start on the zone girdling the Earth, which is there's a large group of beings and intelligences that look after the Earth, and then we would move to the Moon, and then we would move to Mercury, and then we would move to Venus, and then the Sun. And then we would go the more challenging planets being Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then we've got the extrasolar planets. But if we just stick with those first 7, I mean, when you think about Venus, for example, here's an easy one. Venus and Mars, right? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So we have a good contrast there between 2 planets. And so, what if I ask the crowd, here's a good thing. What do you think of when you think of the planet Venus, right? Now, remember, every celestial body, and there's the positive and the negative. They've got to balance each other out. This is duality we occupy. And so the Venus sphere has its positive traits and its negative traits. And you could think, well, just to start with, what would we see Venus representing? Well, I mean, if we think about Aphrodite and Venus herself, and the sort of the goddess that's associated with that, I mean, it's usually about, I'm thinking of things like luxury and love and comfort and, like this, what about you? What would you think about? What about Mars, right? What images does that conjure up? Mars, the god of war. He steps off the battlefield covered in blood, but glorious, and walks into the tent, and Venus is waiting there for him, perhaps, or Aphrodite, or this kind of thing where you have these aspects. So, if you think about the days of the week, 7 days: Monday, Moon Day; Tuesday is Mars Day; Wednesday is Mercury Day; Thursday, today, is Jupiter Day, or Thor's Day; Friday is Freya's Day or Venus Day; Saturday is Saturn Day; Sunday is Sunday. You can actually theme your week to the day you're on. Like, so today's Thursday, you could go and give a bunch of money to charity or help some people out, expansion type things, or go out and, expand yourself with resources. You can run with these in a whole bunch of ways, but their personality types, if you think about those statues back in the old days in Greek and Greek times, these gods were a sort of a step down from the ultimate god. In a sense, they represented a spectrum of character traits, positive and negative. Whereas, say, if you were having an affair you were seeing another woman instead of your wife, then that might be the negative aspects of Aphrodite or Venus playing out in your life. Whereas if you have a beautiful, loving, intimate, focused relationship with your significant other, that's it swinging to the other end, where it's like it's playing a positive role. And so you can, through the black and white soul mirror process, you can also look at, potential, categorize them by planetary influences as well. But like you said, astrology can pull you around a bit too, and that's why part of the Hermetic path is to essentially, to a greater extent or a great extent, liberate yourself from your personal astrology, so that you're not at the behest of the gods, so to speak. You're becoming a free sovereign.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. And I see Jake and Corbin have been following some of the practice that you're talking about and working with the different planets. I'll just bring this up for a little moment too. I also heard someone talk about, let me just pop this down. So if we look at the sun being that illumination or that ultimate kind of transformational goal of enlightenment, if we look at the different planets coming in being a map towards that, so like Pluto being that, I guess, that dweller on the threshold, that underworld sort of consciousness that's all about transformation. Then when we step to, let me just look for here, we've got Neptune, which is all about transcendence, and also to do with ego as well, which is interesting. And then we've got Uranus, which is the light bringer, the element of the unusual, and also related to like technology. Then we've got Saturn, which is about us, I guess, going through like constraint, control. It's that sort of, I guess, that granddaddy Saturn energy that a lot of people talk about. Then we step towards Jupiter, where we're all about. So you can see these states of consciousness if we look at the planets and the movement towards the sun. But Jupiter being that one of expansion, Mars being that one of sort of taking action. And, it's the one that's like, right, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to stop until I get there. Then we come to Earth. So it's interesting to reflect on like, what is it that we're supposed to learn from Earth consciousness? Because if these are even like schools, which I've seen sometimes in readings, like being Venus being a school, for example.
Yes.
What is it that we're learning in Earth school? Because look, Venus is next. And from what I've seen of readings where people are in Venus school or Venus consciousness, it seems like a really, really lovely place and very different to, I guess, what we're currently experiencing with Earth, which Earth, I guess, if we're looking at it from a Vedic approach, is about duality. So the dark and the light, or the good and the evil. And maybe that's that law of opposites. And, maybe we're at that stage where we're realizing that this is really about putting our attention and focus back to that God self, that higher self, that universal collective, or that God consciousness. And it's interesting, you've got Mercury, ruler of the mind, next before illumination too. So is this higher mind? How do you see us in like relation to looking at what do you think we're here to learn in Earth School?
Well, one of my colleagues, who's a very experienced explorer and practicer, I've heard a bunch of different people give views. I've got my own view, but one of the guys really pointed it out in a way that's quite empowering in a challenge sense, and that is that Earth is essentially a laboratory for leaders. This is a tough place. And to find your courage and your strength, your conviction, your persistence, and your willpower. In Hermetics, we seek to categorize everything by the four elements. And so, the four divine virtues of God being, the air element being omniscience, the earth element being omnipresence, the fire element being omnipotence, and the water element being sort of love, universal love and immortality. These are the sort of, when we're starting at the bottom of the ladder, we're moving our way towards these things. And we have to find, they call it sort of like squaring the circle, the circle being like the great divine kind of thing, right? And squaring it is kind of how we, use our earthly means to figure out how to encounter and approach it. And so, these are old ways of doing this. But sorry, I kind of lost the track of thought there. But
No, that's all good. This is just such a fun conversation. It's so stimulating. You were talking about the different elements and sort of working
yes.
through the different elements. Yeah, it was fascinating. Oh, and you and I were talking backstage too about like the birth of the stars, the alchemy of spirit and matter, and we were talking about sort of creating from this womb space. Now, I guess if we're putting it back to looking at this planetary trajectory, and we're currently in Earth state consciousness. And we look at everything existing in the universe to do with vibration and to do with frequency. Do you think that we could sort of have a faster evolution if we can pop our our frequency more in alignment with the sun, instead of getting caught up in the mind or caught up in Mars energy or Mercury. What's your sort of perspective on how we can kind of quantum jump or leap a lot faster?
Okay, so there's a bunch of ways of looking at this. And before I mentioned this idea of anchors, or the lowest aspects of ourselves, whether they're base carnal desires or the lower aspects of the physical vital body, I'm talking about the influences and the drivers that, when we, if, like, for example, if you're an impulsive purchaser, you see something and you've got to have it. And it's a pattern that keeps getting you in the crap because you're blowing out your credit card bill all the time. You need to knock that on the head, because all it's going to do is this is going to wipe out your resources, destabilize your financial security and your situation. And many of us know about this, and it's like, at some point it's not a long-term solution. It's not tenable. And so here on the earth plane, the first thing is to get what you call your Malkuth in order, or the kingdom, or your getting your bedrock platform of operation in order. And so the earth opportunity of liberating yourself from what you can become aware of, because what you're doing is that you're reconning the current situation with your current level of awareness. You only know what you know. You're going, okay, why do I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and feel like a Big Mac? I don't want a damn Big Mac. I don't even want to think about that stuff. Well, chances are it's probably because if you're watching free-to-air television, every 20 minutes there's a McDonald's ad or something like this, and it's like, okay, well, I don't want that anymore. So you've got to go, well, I've got to manage that, and so, and you've got lower aspects of your personality too. You've got, you might have, like I said, funky habits are funky habits, guys, and you've got to write them out. Now, you might be like, well, those things, though, at the core of them, there's something about it. There's an energetic pull, and all you got to do is clean up those habits. And it was like I was talking about before, when Aphrodite or Venus is expressing herself negatively in your life, we have some ways of identifying that, and we want to swing it to the other end. And so we have to become aware of what those things are and deal with them. And like I said, focus on the positives about yourself. They will give more energy and fuel those better parts of yourself, and will actually help you lift out of those things. But bottom line is, on the earth core, yep, so that wonderful image you have there is obviously the Kabbalistic tree of life. And down the bottom,
right down the bottom,
there's the kingdom there. So everything sort of drips down and condenses in the bottom, and that's where we are, down the bottom there. And so, our first goal is to become a master of the earth plane. And so before you go and, lock yourself in a cave for 10 years or whatever it is, you better make sure that you've got, all the food and everything you're going to need to be able to do that. Get your resources in order. We live in a Western world largely, and there are responsibilities more so than if you live in a cave at the top of the Himalayas. So, you have to get real about your situation. But one of those things is, you got to remember, we live in Western societies. It's very busy. It's very influential. We get put in schools for a 12-year period, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for 12 years. And that's going to leave a mark. That's going to leave a pretty heavy impression. And so you're going to actually end up undoing a lot of what you picked up from others and situations at the starting point. But the planets are something you get to once you've sort of released yourself from the influences of the four elements here on the earth plane at a physical, vital, astral, and mental level. And then once this microcosm's cleaned up, that's usually on the magical path when we start going outside of the sphere of earth, and we go on the return path. The next drop off is the moon, which would be considered to be related to the emotional body, and then Mercury, which would be the mental body. And then, then we start getting into, planetary consciousness, which is vast, and we have to acclimatize ourselves to each one as we move through them. That's why, like the sun, you can stop there. You can go further than the sun, but that's generally where it's a good place to plan for getting to the sun on your return path. But Yeah, I mean, the experience you're going to have is going to be quite unique per person as well. There's going to be some familiar faces and things, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so hopefully that sort of helps.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I can see people resonating in the comments too. And it's interesting, the sun being a portal. And I've used it as a portal in travel to go into different dimensions or different universes, multiverses, and things too. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess once we pass this kind of universal school, there's perhaps another universal school. I'll just bring this picture back up too. So when we look at the Tree of Life and we see all of the different cities, and I was really lucky in college, my teacher actually cut out big circles and she wrote each of the names of the different cities on and made the Tree of Life. And we all worked out our tarot cards that went with each of our cities based on our numerology, so our birth dates and things. And I think mine was Nedsac, number 7, the green one there. But I remember we all had to sit or stand in our cities and kind of meditate and feel into that. And it was interesting because, like, when you look at it from astrology or the zodiac point of view, we're kind of given, I guess, this imprint or blueprint as to like what it is that we're working through or moving through. And she would talk about that there's various different ways, I guess, to move through up to the Godhead or up to Keter, up to the crown. I always like the idea of going through number 6, going through Tippereth, through, more of the heart and the beauty element. But yeah, it was just a very different way of physically being immersed in that energy. Such a fascinating course, and we will have her on the show too. We had some internet issues last time that went to happen. Just coming into a little quote that I had written down. So let me bring this. So to know oneself, we must be conscious, and to have free will is consciousness too. So I guess it's being aware or realizing when we are in, how you were saying, like if we have too much Venus or that Aphrodite influence of where, say for example, someone cheating on their partner and they're sort of like living that more. I guess when they're conscious of that, they can reel it back in and make a conscious whole brain approach rather than being led with like the lower desires. So I see, I guess that's what we see in a lot of Hollywood movies and programming is they're trying to keep us in that lower astral, trying to keep us contained within the animal body or animal impulses and things too. But I guess if we can master this, we start to shift into like a deeper level of knowing and a deeper way of being.
Yeah, so you know that movie The Matrix, right, where they're all batteries lined up against the wall, they're all being harvested. All right, guys,
Yeah.
that's what you are. You're an energy generating, emanating being, right? And the control system's got a pretty tight setup, and you're being, if you're watching free to air news or anything like that, you're essentially being gaslit to give off angry energy or whatever it is. That's a food source. And so, taking control of your mind is, how you control. You start with you start to take control of your astral body. So whatever happens here, if you have a thought, if you encounter information that triggers a Incredible Hulk, like I'm really angry, then it goes from here and it triggers this thing off. And then you're going to have physical reaction. So it goes thought, feeling, action, right? And that's the manifestation chain there, right? What we call the creation cycle. The destruction cycle or the release cycle is when we just give things back to God, so to speak. We unmanifest things so that they're not us. There's different ways of doing releases, but essentially, oh geez, I've lost the train of thought again because I just go on these random tangents. But
I love it. I love our conversations.
What were you saying? You were talking about the
we were talking about sort of like the lower desires or like the animalistic body, and then
yes.
we're talking about like the astral and
yes.
the mental body. Yeah.
So what happens in Hermetics is we go through and we harmonize and clean each one up. We get, like you said, here we go. That's right. Know thyself, because once you look seriously, there are some things you cannot unsee and cannot unlearn. You cannot unsee or unhear and these types of things. And you go, I know this is true about myself. I have to do something about it because it's getting in the way of what I really want. And that's going to take courage, effort, time, whatever you need. It's going to take intelligent approach, perhaps. You're dealing with an internal environment that's quite messy. And, like even in the early pages of Barden's book, we deal with retraining the unconscious so it works for us. We want to master all these internal faculties and situations so that we become worthy, essentially, of stepping into the bigger workshop, into the bigger sandpit, because these lower aspects of us are basically our bodies run amok. That's like unruly children. And, even as adults, like, these things, these proclivities for funky things or for negative, you're generally a negative, cynical, sarcastic person. It's pretty hard not to be cynical nowadays, honestly, it's all gaslighting. If you can encounter information coming from the mainstream for the purposes of staying abreast of what's being told, you know how to read between the lines. You can say their lips are moving and saying this, but we know that's word salad. That means that. If you can observe and encounter this information without it setting you off, then you are becoming a master. And that's the idea, is that you become the master rather than being mastered by the billboard with the hot chick, or the McDonald's ad, or the I need to get the latest iPhone, or whatever it is that's being thrust at you. Or everyone in society behaves like this, and so should you, because everyone does it. Oh, really? That's why we've got this situation we currently enjoy, is because everyone's doing stuff because everyone else is doing it.
And I was thinking of the girl in the red dress too, when you were talking about that, and the billboard, the girl in the red dress from the Matrix. It's our minds are constantly kept distracted. And, as much as it would not be nice on one level to have technology go down, on another level, what would happen to our thought path and our consciousness? That would be interesting. In how would we evolve spiritually if we didn't have so much distraction? But it's fascinating. If we're looking at, I guess, what's morphing and changing within society and within consciousness, if we look to face reading, Chinese face reading, we can actually see, even with like beauty trends and trends specifically with eyebrows. Okay, so like your eyebrows represent a certain kind of like level of thinking and a certain type of personality. What we're sort of seeing with a little bit bolder, kind of fluffier, more towards the middle of the eyebrows. So in, I guess, the 90s, everyone would sort of have them plucked and starting further out, these skinny little tadpole or like line things. Whereas now we sort of see that they're more fluffy and coming in a little bit further, which is a little bit of taking on your own authority, not having sort of as much respect for, I guess, things that we would relate to Saturn, like corporations, government, authoritarian type things. It's kind of having your own inner authority. So we're seeing sort of more of a shift in terms of what's becoming more trending. So yeah, we can see it reflected definitely in the beauty world and in consciousness. Because if we think about things being a blueprint, and that's sort of part of our consciousness, it then becomes expressed in our facial features, in kind of, I guess, what we put our attention and everything to. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what else is coming up. That's just one thing that I've noticed, and I noticed a few other face readers also talking about it.
So when you get your next challenge in life, you're going to be, okay, and when you get to your life review, you're going to be like, all right, pull it up, boys. Okay. All right, Phil, this is the thing that happened. You remember this? And you're like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And this is how you responded to it. And you're going to go, man, I could have played that better. And so, I say this on my live streams as well, when I do my hangouts, and I say, look, man, you take the high road every time. It's going to be cringe, and it's going to be awkward, and it's going to be a bit, but you're going to sleep better at night if you take that high road and go, there's the easy way, what is it, there's the simple way and the easy way, and the right way isn't always the easiest way, I should say. But just being honest with yourself,
Yeah.
Just being honest and going, look, man, accept that, you've got, there's things about your personality that you may not get sorted this time round, but start thinking like you can. You
Yeah.
might be like, this mountain's far too high. But, like I said, when I used to teach guitar, when the kids would see the fretboard and see 6 strings and 12 frets, and there's actually 20 odd, but that's like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to what? Remember? Like oh my God. And it's like you break it down for people so they can make sense of it. And you show them the repeating patterns. And that's why those who have come before us with the wisdom, they're helping us so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every generation. So that, the coming generations can build upon what has already happened rather than having to start again. Clean slate. Oh my gosh. How often do we see that throughout history? A civilization gets wiped out and then they're back to agriculture and hunting
Yeah.
and gathering again and starting from scratch. And they've only got 1 or 2 architects or engineers or scientists that survived or something like this.
Yeah.
So,
And I think what you were describing, that took my mind to, astrology charts. And that's kind of like our blueprint, or if we look at it being like a little script that we're given in our character playing in this world or this simulated reality matrix, whatever you want to call it, realm. Looking to the South Node, it's kind of our comfort zone. It's kind of what we mastered last lifetime or what we put our time, attention, and focus into. And it's so easy to slip back into that. Whereas, if we're looking to our North Node or our Midhaven, I find looking into those things especially more gives sort of like a deeper understanding of what our soul and our physical expression behind that it can be used in combination to, I guess, march that mountain or get to that high point, like Emma's saying at the top. And I love what Tim said. Tim said a lot of old Kung Fu masters were known by their nicknames related to the eyebrows. White eyebrow, red eyebrow, heavy brow. I would love to hear some more on that, Tim. If you don't mind sending me something on Instagram, if you find anything, I would love that. Thank you. So we are coming to the top of the hour. We do have a couple of questions. Lorianne, do you know, I was just thinking this last night and I saw your message about premonitions too. So maybe you were also tapping into something for some upcoming things. So Phil, there's a question for you from Tim. Are those pearls in the crown I cannot pronounce this, cupol shards that we can find here in Ketha or Keta?
okay. So what I'll say is that I'll bring this right out of the metaphysical realm, Tim. I know, I know the terms you're using here. But what I'll say is this, is that...
I'll just say, Ket is that city that we saw right at the top, the crown of the tree of life that we put up with the Kabbalah before.
Yeah,
Just
so that's essentially the Godhead.
Yeah.
And prior to that, we have the primal swirlings type of thing. But yeah, so when I'm talking about the crown, I'm talking about because there's lots of ways of associating tree of life, from everything from chakras to tarot cards, and there's a lot. But just to keep it real straight. When you're trying to get closer to something that's really pure, it's gonna be harder for you to get there with too much. The grubbiness is like a weight that becomes an unbearable. Once you start getting, there's some things you can't go back to, right? Once you start this path, you might be like. I used to enjoy sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man, back in the day. That was me. I was a musician, and that's a colloquialism. It wasn't actually that bad, but it was a lot of drinking. I don't drink anymore. I got bored with it. And if I go back, oh man, it's just not enjoyable. But that's what I'm saying is that those pearls are those things that you're aiming towards, and that gives you your general north point, because you're seeing the characteristics you want to take on in the people around you. And so that's why having others there, your friends are the path. The people you have around you, they say that you are the sum total of your 5 closest friends type of thing. Just to use a loose sort of thing there. But, as far as I'm going into sort of deep detail on Tree of Life stuff, come on over to the channel and we can talk about that stuff, Tim. But just to
Yeah.
keep it sort of general, yeah, just keep your eyes on the prize, guys. Easiest thing, and surround yourself with the people who have, just like you might outsource, like if you're not good with graphic design, you go get a graphic designer. Why not have a friend who does that or has a skill that you want to learn, and you'll just like start naturally developing the infrastructure within your mind and your psyche and so on to be able to take that on, because you have an interest in it, and you're also making steps and effort to communicate and bring someone in so that information exchange, that resonance can happen.
That's such a great way to describe it. And, if we think about in terms of years and lifespan, if we're trying to master all these things, I know from having built websites and things in the past and, created my products and things, I could have, created the images and things myself, but I'm much better to take it to someone who understands mathematics and can put my vision into a physical representation known as a packet. I think that's such a good way to look at it. But we are that sum total of the 5 people that we hang out with. So we do definitely have to be selective. And I think you summarized it really well when you said keep your eyes on the prize. We have one more question from Tim just before we go. And it is it like creating an egregoric or a tulpa body with the energy field to interact better with the cosmos?
Yeah, so, okay, so on the topic of egregores, which is essentially a Greek word which refers to an energetic reservoir or a cloud. In the modern vernacular, we would talk about, cloud computing or something like this. Essentially, well, like in the Bible, Jesus talks about, when 2 or more of you come together in my name, there I am. Essentially, you're bringing like 2 tuning forks together, and that creates something that the whole becomes larger than the sum of its parts. And when you bring a group of people together for whatever, you form one of these egregores or egregores, and they're a reservoir in the sky, in the cloud, if you will, in the ether. It's an invisible kind of energy field that's got power and it's got information. It's got energy, information, and consciousness in it. Okay, and the more people come together, like a classic example is like if you go to church, a Christian church, there's an egregore based around that. And that's a sub-egregore because you have how many tens of thousands of different denominations of sort of, that stemmed from Protestant Christianity. And so you have this, you have this local egregore. I recognize the time's getting slim too, mate, so I'll keep it short.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So, but you also have the overall. So you've got the overall Christian egregore, the reservoir that you connect with, that has all of these people for a couple of thousand years putting all of this worship and they're traveling distances and they're devotees and they're putting all this holy energy, if you will, into this their devotion. And you can tap into that. Unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword, though, because a lot of bad things have been done in the name of Christ, for example, or in the name of Christianity. And so there's a kind of like, that's why I love being a hermeticist. We're just like we're very particular about what we involve ourselves, which worlds we walk in, because egregores can essentially they can be your best friend. You can get free power from them, but you also, you can take on their bad stuff too. And so some of these, I don't know if we use something like, say, Reiki. Reiki is, I've heard that, some people's Reiki is starting to dry up a bit. The egregore has maybe been there's not enough people pumping into it, right? They're using the symbols and pulling the juice, but the practices empower the egregore by doing the actual Reiki practices. It's a thing, right? So before the symbols were published, because they weren't supposed to be published, because they weren't, it requires a bit more of elaboration, but essentially that's why you have this pillar of silence where you don't talk about your practice, because if you start showing someone your rituals and your gestures and all these types of things, they start doing it, and then you're basically sharing the bowl of soup with someone else, and you might not have the same values and ethics as them, and you start cross-pollinating with people you don't want to at a very special sacred level, when the guards are down and you're opened up to the divine, there's some dude just hitching to your wagon, it's like, sorry, Tim, I hope that answers your question. But yeah, like
That was
being
a great
involved
answer.
being involved in certain groups, especially when you're sensitive, you will start getting influenced and affected by that egregore. Just like if you go and hang out with a group of people, just like kids, when they go to school, they'll get out into the school field and they'll start getting into that hive mind. They'll be different when they're by themselves, and they'll be different with certain friends, and they'll be very different when they're in a large group of kids. They start conforming to that central peak or alpha theme. And so this is why empowering kids to be critical thinkers at an early age and to help them develop their intuitive skills is so vital, because the system will literally like overwrite that with their preferences.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we've all seen those kids that don't fit the system. And, I think luckily we were those kids. So that, what was it? The $10 trillion propaganda machine didn't work on, more than neurodivergent. I can't remember the exact quote, but yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. This was an amazing part 2, probably my favorite episode yet, talking about planetary consciousness and things of this sort of nature. I just want to remind you guys where you can find Phil, and I do have one more quote to share with you before we go. So also we have readings available. Let me just pop this up. So you'll find consultations. I have the Starseed reading. Mystical Oracle, I would say, would probably be the most popular, because you can come to me with your questions and we'll look through all of your questions and dive into what Spirit's saying about it. We'll look into your aura and see what's coming up in your aura, as well as looking into the tarot. So you get 3 things combined in the session, and you find that synergistically they all work together to give you the same message. And it's so nice for our conscious mind to see what Spirit says reflected in the cards. So use 10% off discount code Jupiter, and please hit that thumbs up. And Phil and I are looking forward to bringing you the final part of our series next week. So make sure to hit that little notification bell and come on over to Phil's Substack, and you will see his bookings over here in the booking section. So he has some bookings available, and you'll also be able to join the Discord chat and his YouTube channel as well. So definitely go and check that out. And I just want to leave us with this quote from Neville Goddard. So this is something to ponder on through the week, and also going into Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's to everyone. And maybe even think about this quote in relation to the energy behind that. So imagination is the very gateway of reality. So just going back over what we said tonight, and we're talking about all these elements of creation and thing, knowing that you are that lens, or you are that consciousness, but you've got to hold and focus your camera. So definitely work with your imagination, with meditation. Is there any message that you would love to leave people with for tonight?
Absolutely. Look, hey guys, for those of you that might be having some trouble keeping your mind in order, because it's a real thing, okay, I would suggest this one little exercise, and I just pump this because this one exercise could just change things so much more for the positive. And that is to simply get comfy on a chair, on the couch, close your eyes, and just watch the thoughts rise and fall away. Don't touch them. Don't let them take you on a ride where you get emotionally involved. You're just objectively watching the thoughts. Whatever comes up, you're watching Me TV, or literally YouTube. You're like, okay, you're sitting there, you're like, okay, you're just taking an interest in what appears in your mind. And by doing that over time, those thoughts become more distant, and they won't instantly magnetize and start this creation cycle. You'll be able to just experience information coming in from wherever it's coming from. Could be external, could be internal, whatever, but it won't start a process in. It'll just be, there's a thing. That thing there, when I used to encounter it, it would get me all wound up or upset or that. But now it doesn't, because it's just a thing. That's all it is. I am not that thing. It's a thing that's separate to me. This will set you off into it will just make space in your life for more beauty and more positive things, and the subconscious or the unconscious, whatever we want to call it, will go, oh, you're not into that stuff. Well, I'll stop putting it on display for you then, and I'll start picking better quality stuff that you do pay attention to, that you want. So just sitting and watching the thoughts. I've written some articles on it on the Substack. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, wonderful.
And that is a wonderful practice. That's something I work with too. It's almost like you're catching that subconscious telling you a story. And we do get to actually be the curator of our story, and we do get to choose. It's like swiping that window away, not the content I want to see, but we have to actively hold that content. So thank you so much for that beautiful technique. And I look forward to seeing you on Mason Jupiter next week. So make sure to check out Phil's channel and everything he's got going on. Thank you so much, Soul Tribe. We appreciate you guys. Love you all.
Thank you. See you, Yvonne.
Bye.